Thank you for joining me for another quick hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn. With me today, I have Jim Tam. He is a principal client director at Korn Ferry's digital group, where he advises organizations on how to improve their sales effectiveness through using world-class sales methodology and technology. I have Ed Samuel. He is a career coach at Sam Nova, where he helps mid to senior level leaders get to a better place, whether they are currently working or in transition. And I have Bill Dolan. He is a virtual event director and video producer at Spirit Media, where he has done Emmy-nominated TV. He is a marketing strategist, an author, and a coach, helping people promote their brand stories. The question today: if someone doesn't find a joke funny, do you assume they have a lousy sense of humor or that the joke was flawed? Ed, what are your thoughts?
I love to joke around with my wife of over 40 years. Sometimes I think I'm saying something funny, and then she'll just look at me and say, I don't think that was so funny. And I was like, shoot, I messed up that one, right? I probably use humor more at home than I would ever do at work. So a lot of it has to do with what kind of joke is it? Who's it really intended for? And is it a dry sense of humor? Or is it just out there? But it did remind me of work. 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when I was in corporate America, I got the grilling of, here are all the things you shall not joke about related to sex, anything to do with age, anything to do with physical appearance, anything to do with disability, anything to do with anything. And I'll be honest with you, it scared me so badly back then. I stopped using humor at work, except on a few exceptions. Just hard stop. Don't even want to go there.
Yeah, I guess I go next, maybe. When I got this question, I really had to think about it because it really made me think about my career. If I had a nickel for every time somebody said to me, Jim, that's not funny, I'd be a millionaire, because I kind of maybe don't know that line, because I find what's funny as opposed to what's funny for my audience. I go back to like the Home Alone, where people were getting hit by paint cans, and I was hilarious. But in reality, somebody was getting hurt. But to me, I thought that was hilarious, and it was meant to be humorous. So I've started to think that it's not so much them as it is probably me. And a lot of times, if I say a joke and it's not funny, I automatically look internally. So maybe it's my delivery, maybe it's the context, maybe it's me rather than another person. But however, if consistently that person continues to find things not funny, then I start saying, okay, maybe it's them and not me.
That's a great point. I mean, let's face it, that humor and the things that make us laugh is very, very personal, because it ultimately comes back and it triggers a perception and our willingness to maybe stretch and explore things that are the nature of humor, which is surprise. And there's levels too, because we write scripts. They're supposed to be funny. And I say supposed to be because sometimes they're not. And we always talk about three levels. One is a humorous environment. One is a humorous setting. And the other is what makes you laugh. For example, there's people that absolutely adore Ray Romano, the comedian, and folks that don't. I mean, one of my favorite lines from Ray Romano is, if you find me chopped up in the freezer, don't believe the suicide note. I think that's funny.
That is funny.
You know, but guess what? There's someone that probably has a fear of cleavers that is sitting there saying, that's not funny at all. Another thing is just awkward circumstances. I read the other day that if you find an eggshell in your Egg McMuffin, it's both annoying and reassuring. Now I think that's humorous. It's not funny. So I recognize that just looking at us as a group, nothing I've said Ed thinks is funny. So I'm okay with that.
Well, let me share a story, a real quick one where somebody was making a joke about a cat. And there were three people in the room. The person was making the joke, and the two people in the room were very slender, fit people. And they were making a joke about this particular fat cat that happened to be in the office, kind of the mascot. Everyone laughed. It was great. The following week goes by, same person, two new people are in the room, makes the same joke. One person laughed, one person didn't budge.
Mm.
Just happened the second person was way overweight. So what we begin thinking is okay can become very unokay, but the joke is at the expense of the cat. We're okay with animals and things, but as soon as it kind of drifts into the people, then it became less funny. So it's really interesting, isn't it? Isn't the perspective around us when we're making jokes and humor and happening, right
And
time?
that's
all
an
wrong?
interesting point, because so my dad used to say it's only funny if everybody's laughing, but he would tell some very seriously off-color jokes. And I realized that for him, it's okay to tell off-color jokes if everyone in that insular group is okay with whatever inappropriate joke you're telling. But for me, I question your character if you're telling, to your point, Ed, jokes about sex or race or anything like that. And if you're making people laugh because it's awkward, that's not funny.
Yeah, you definitely have to know your audience, and you got to shift your context, and
But it's
at the
more
end of
than
the day, you have to
audience,
choose your
though,
audience.
right?
What?
It's got to be more than audience, because I may know my audience. If I'm in a room with whatever group that thinks it's okay for me to make jokes about another group, is it okay because that's that audience? Or does that say something about my character that I'm making those kind of jokes, even though they might be funny in that setting?
Well, I think it does say a lot about your character. I mean, ultimately, when you ask the question, do they not have a sense of humor? Are you not funny? That whole idea. I mean, I agree with Jim. Every audience is different.
Mm-hmm.
But the essence of what comes out of your mouth, and if you really think about the heart of humor, we usually tell jokes because we believe they're a gift.
Mm.
And we believe we're contributing something to either a life or a group that brings them joy, that brings them temporal happiness. And so if that happiness comes at the expense of hurting somebody, I think that's where we have to ask, is there a line there? And that's probably why those that are more sensitive to the prospect, like Ed's scenario with the cat, am I telling you something that could be at the expense of somebody else? That's where I think that we go, they don't have a sense of humor. Or maybe they have a better moral compass.
It could be, or they could have childhood trauma that's emotional garbage in their lives that you're tripping over by accident.
Oh, exactly.
Is that my fault if I accidentally trip over your emotional trauma? I don't think so.
I think that's a risk of having conversations with other human beings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, jokes and humor are usually probably more so because we expect an outcome. And when that outcome doesn't happen, it falls flat on its face. So if I say, don't believe the suicide note if you find me chopped up in the freezer, I think that's hilarious because I've not had any loved ones chopped up.
Mm.
But I would argue that note would be completely inappropriate if you ran into 3 or 4 people I met last week whose son committed suicide.
Exactly, the timing.
It's context,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I think that kind of brings it full circle that it's not that anybody doesn't have a sense of humor. It's not that a joke isn't funny.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Jim's point originally is that your audience and what comes from you, the moral compass and the context, changes everything. And once you understand that, you either go like what Ed had to do and say, I'm not going to tell jokes,
Mm.
or take the risk. But whatever you do, do with love.
And I do think that if you get feedback that the jokes you're telling are inappropriate, you need to listen to that. Having been a young woman who is classically attractive, I can tell you that men said things to me that they said were jokes that were completely inappropriate when I was a young woman. I don't get it as much anymore. I'm not sure if it's because I'm not attractive or because I've gotten older and don't put up with it. But either way, I do think that if you get feedback that it's not funny, then you can change the way you have that conversation. And I can tell you that telling an astrophysics joke in a group of people who don't understand astrophysics isn't funny.
But it is funny you telling it.
So that is our 10 minutes. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me about humor. I think that it's a challenging subject and people should think about it more often. So thank you for thinking about it with me. And I look forward to speaking to each of you very soon.
Thank you.